This meeting is being recorded.
We are live and recording.
Hi, everybody.
So we've got 17 participants so far with
only 2 of them are attendees. The rest of them are us.
Good chunk of us being those presenting. So we'll just, of course, give it some more time before we kick this thing off.
Dave, can you look at the chat panel?
You can look at the chat panel. I think you need to enable chat to everybody. Let's figure out how to do so. Here we go. Attendees can chat with everyone. And panelists can chat with everyone. I think that should enable it. Maybe just to test this out, if you're an attendee and wouldn't mind throwing a little chat in the chat just to test out that functionality, that would be much appreciated. Thank you, Sean Parent. Appreciate it. So for those just joining, we are just gonna wait a couple more minutes for those stragglers. We've got a packed agenda, so we won't wait too long, but give it a couple more minutes. And for now, we can all appreciate this fine photo from Dustin. Where is that, Dustin?
That is Orient Bay, about an hour and a half outside of Thunder Bay. If you ever get the opportunity, I'd highly recommend going up there. The rock is phenomenal.
Nice. Eric, I think you, yeah, you were not on mute.
Let me try to fix that.
Thank you.
Oh, speaking of Eric, he's actually the one to talk about Orient Bay.
Hey, Dustin.
Hey. Are you back home or are you in the desert right now?
I'm still in the desert, brother.
Well done, sir. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. Probably another week or two.
Nice, where it's nice and warm.
Yeah. But I'm seeing the ice is forming up, so I'm going to be heading back soon. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. Here we go.
Thanks, Eric.
Apparently reception in Indian Creek is pretty good. I think the last time I went to the creek, there was like no reception at all, depending on where you were.
Yeah, I drove into Moab for this. Zero reception.
Yeah. That makes sense. I was going to say, because I thought that, yeah, it was kind of a reception dead zone. I'm sure that won't be the case forever, though, but at least for now, we can hold out. Well, thanks for going into the big city to dial in.
Oh, yeah. Anything for the community. Yeah.
Just give it maybe 1 or 2 more minutes and then we'll kick this thing off.
one last question. When the slides are going, will people be able to see me as well, or is it going to be full screen on slide? Me as well?
It'll be full screen on slide, but they should see you in the top corner.
Perfect. Awesome.
All right, I think I'll get started here and presume we'll have a number of stragglers that come through, and unfortunately will miss my well-practiced introduction, but that is quite all right. My name is Dave Irwin. I'm the current secretary of the board for the OAC, as well as, of course, a volunteer. So welcome, first off, to our annual general meeting and 2023 town hall. I have the esteemed privilege of being your host this evening. Normally, of course, we've switched to a virtual environment, but I haven't met necessarily everybody on the call here today, but I live in Toronto and climate Joe Rockets. So just a couple of key items maybe to level set before we jump right in, because we do have a lot of content to get through tonight. The OAC's AGM is really the formal portion of this evening, and as our AGM, it's a formal requirement for us as a nonprofit and covered things like our bylaw changes or committee member updates, and really it's just a reflection of good governance as an organization. So we'll spend some time on the AGM before very quickly moving into our town hall, where you'll hear from a number of different folks on the line tonight around key projects, Crag updates, and some regional representatives also sharing some updates from those areas as well. And so really excited here to introduce Laura Schmidt, Marco Folidor, so I pronounced that one right, Jim Clark, and Eric Fishman have all taken time out of their days as representatives from a number of different areas in Ontario. Clearly, again, we don't have representation from all of Ontario. We know Ontario is a big province, so we've chosen a couple of key folks here that we're really excited to have with us tonight. In terms of just who we are as well, because while I'd like to think everybody knows who we are having joined our AGM and town hall, it's good just to go through and just understand again, what is our mission here? So the OAC, or the Ontario Alliance of Climbers, we're a volunteer nonprofit that works to preserve and expand access to climbing across the province. And we do so by working through with a number of different stakeholders, from municipalities or private landowners, things like the provincial government, very topical this year, and ultimately to fulfill our mission. And so I'm joined here today also by a number of our key volunteers, as well as the 6 board members on my screen here right now, including our very hardworking co-chairs, Mike Penny, and as is always, Randy Kilbasowicz, which I'm sure I've mispronounced that. So again, I really want to say you'll hear from all these folks throughout the night, but you'll also have the chance to ask questions throughout as well. So hopefully from all these folks, you'll at least get a chance to see their face pop up on the screen. In terms of sort of final hygiene items, first off, we're recording this, so surprise. So if you've got questions that pop up, you'll see those on YouTube a week from now. And then secondly, in terms of a chat and Q&A, just want to remind everybody of their Zoom functionality. So at the bottom, you'll see both a chat and a Q&A. And we'll just ask, if you've got questions, make sure they make it into the Q&A, preferably other than the chat, just to make sure everything gets answered by the end of the night. We'll be answering questions throughout, particularly if they're topical to the topic that we're discussing. But we'll also have a Q&A period right at the end of the night, where you'll be able to just post it on the actual Q&A chat functionality or Q&A functionality, but you'll also have the ability to ask it in person. We can unmute you and allow you to ask it of the board directly. So looking forward to that. And we've got, again, a packed agenda. So unless there's any further questions or comments from the board that I'm forgetting, I am going to pass this over to Dustin and to Mike to kick off our formal AGM. So with that, Dustin and Mike.
Thanks, Dave. All right, so as Dave mentioned, we need to get through a brief portion of formal business for our AGM. So I'm going to take us through that, and Dustin is going to help along the way. So I will get into it. So good morning, everyone. Good evening, everyone. I think I know most of you that I see here as attendees. For those of you who don't know me, I am Mike Penny. I am the director and co-chair of the Ontario Alliance of Climbers. On behalf of the board, I would like to welcome you to the 12th Annual General Meeting of members of the OAC. As I mentioned, we have a short formal agenda, followed by the town hall presentation that Dave alluded to, and then we'll get into Q&A at the end. I will now call the AGM to order. I will act as the chair, and Dave Irwin will act as the secretary of the meeting. I will appoint Patrick Lamb as the scrutineer for the meeting. The notice calling this a meeting was sent to each director and member of record of the OAC by email on October 24th, 2023. There are present in person or by proxy at this meeting more than 5 members. Accordingly, quorum is present and the meeting is duly constituted for business. To expedite the formal portion of the meeting, I will ask the members hold any comments or general matters until the town hall portion or the Q&A portion of today's meeting. However, if there's any specific comments specific to motions prior to the vote, members should feel free to make them at the appropriate time. I have the meeting minutes of last year's annual meeting, and these can be reviewed anytime. Unless there is an objection from those of you attending, I will skip the reading of the meeting minutes from last year. And I'll just give it a minute. If anyone has an objection, then Dave will read the minutes from last year, but we certainly could provide those alternatively to you as well if you don't want us to read them here today. Perfect. Okay, so the first portion of, or the first item of business is the presentation of the OAC's 2022 audited financial statements. We will provide you a link to the financial statements in the chat for this meeting. That will come shortly. The OAC Treasurer, Matt Gleason, will also provide a brief financial update during the town hall presentation or portion of the presentation that will take part after this. So unless there is an objection, I will skip the reading of the auditor's report in favor of getting our update from Matt directly. Perfect, no objections. All right, so I'm going to pass this over to Dustin, and he will now chair the second portion of the meeting.
All right, thanks, Mike. I've got my script. All right, so we'll begin with the election of the board of directors. 3 directors are to be elected at this meeting. I will make the nominations of the board so that the board is aware. I would like to nominate Mike Penny, Jessica Best, and Jeremy Fortier. Jeremy, did I get that right? Fortier. To serve as directors of the OAC. The 3 directors elected will hold office for 2 years or until their successors are elected or appointed in accordance with the bylaws and the Corporations Act. All of these nominees are qualified to be directors under the bylaws and have consented to act as directors. Are there any further nominations? Okay, give anyone an opportunity. Okay, as there are no further nominations, I declare the nominations closed. May I have a motion that these 3 nominees be elected as directors of the OAC?
I'd like to make the motion.
Thank you, Patrick Lamb. I got a little bit of an echo there, Pat, just as a heads up. May I have a seconder on that motion?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Mike. Let the records know Mike seconded. The bylaws provide for voting by a show of hands. Since we're at a meeting by video conference, I will ask if there are any objections or abstentions. Just give a few seconds for anybody to voice their objections or their abstentions. Since there are no objections or abstentions, I declare the motion carried. The bylaws and the Corporations Act of Ontario require that any chair be elected by the members by special resolution. The board has proposed that Randy Kalibowicz and Mike Penny be re-elected as co-chairs of the board. I tried, I'm sorry, Randy. This motion must be passed by special resolution. That is a resolution passed by at least 2/3 of the votes cast at this meeting. May I have a motion for special resolution of Randy and Mike as the co-chairs?
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Kacy. May I have a seconder on the motion?
I'll second.
Thanks, Matt. I will now call for a vote on the motion. The bylaws provide for voting by a show of hands. Since we are still at the same teleconference meeting, I will ask for any remote objections or absentations to the above motion. Wonderful. I declare the motion carried. And now, since Mike is voted back in as co-chair, I can now hand over that role back to him for the rest of the AGM. Thank you.
Phew, what a relief. All right, now we're on to the appointment of auditors. So the next item of business is to appoint the appointment of Peters Brown LLP as the OAC's auditors. Peters Brown LLP is the OAC's current auditor. Can I have a motion to appoint Peters Brown LLP as auditor for 2023?
Carry the motion.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I move that Peters Brown LLP be appointed as auditor of the OAC and authorizing the board to fix their remuneration. May I have a motion seconded?
I'll second.
Perfect. I will now call for a vote on the motion. Since we are meeting by teleconference, I will ask for objections or abstentions, and I will wait for both. I don't think we're going to have too much contention here. I declare the motion carried. All right. On to other business. Is there any other business to be brought before this meeting? If not, then that concludes the formal portion of the AGM. I want to thank you guys in advance for attending. I think that most of the good stuff is yet to come. So without further ado, I will call for a motion for this meeting to be terminated.
Move that.
May I have a seconder, please?
I'll second.
Perfect. We can now move on to the next portion of the meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike and Dustin. Cool. So back into our quote unquote informal portion, the town hall. So as I mentioned, we've got a pretty packed agenda for today with a number of different folks. One thing we did a little bit differently this year is, we wanted to hear from people across the province as well as across our board and list of volunteers as well. So again, for those that will be speaking this evening, just as a reminder to mute and unmute yourself, of course, when you are beginning to talk and stopping talking. And with that, I will hand it over to Pat Lamb to present this year's OAC Service Award. Pat?
Thank you, Dave. All right, you hear me?
I can.
Good. All right, it's my pleasure to present. Do you want to move to the next slide?
I know, I wasn't sure whether you wanted to build the suspense.
No, I don't do suspense. It's my pleasure to present the 2023 OAC Service Award, and it's well earned, to Kacy Wilson. So Kacy has been helping out with the OAC since 2018, and a lot has changed in her life since then. She came on as the Niagara Glen portfolio manager, and it's like bouldering. But as you can see in the pictures, hey, there's pictures of Kacy with ropes. One of many changes in her life since then. So the basis for the nomination is all the work that Kacy has done over the years to help the OAC, and in particular, her experience with communications and her deployment of that skill with respect to all of our OAC meetings, and in general, just also our organizational skills and keeping us all in line. So once again, I'd like to thank Kacy very much for all her service to the OAC since 2018.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. So we'll move very quickly on. I think Matt Gleason is up next. And as Mike had alluded to, we've got a bit of a financial update for you off the back of our auditor's report. So Matt Gleason, excuse me, over to you.
Hi, everyone. As Mike had mentioned previously, we have shared the link to the full auditor's report in the chat if you'd like to take a look. My presentation is just one page and has bright, colorful graphs, so we're going to do that instead. A few takeaways for this year. Our spending was on par with the previous year. Something you might notice in the expenses section towards the bottom. Previous year, we didn't have any spending categorized as fundraising. This was just a choice of how things were organized previously. Fundraising expenses were classified as offices in general. Now this is a little bit more accurately classified and easier to understand, so that's why you might see a difference there. Similarly, in the revenue section, we've also started classifying revenue from fundraising activities such as calendar sales are now in their own fundraising section rather than classified as donations. We've had 28% higher revenue than previous years, and that's despite the fact that we had a lot less corporate sponsorship this year. That is entirely due to you guys. We've seen a huge outpouring of support from the community this year. I think our campaign around Devil's Glen and Ontario Parks, we saw a lot of engagement. We saw specifically a lot of new members. And so because of this, we're able to come out very well from this year. We operated about a 4% deficit of our total assets, which is quite low given what the ratio of our cash to expenses are. This is also in the auditor's report, but they've assessed little to no risk to our liquidity or to our credit. I think I'll leave it there. If anyone has any questions, they can put them in the Q&A, or also feel free to email info@.
Awesome. Thanks, Matt. As a guy who also works in financials, I love this slide. You know, it's nice to see. We'll move very quickly along. Again, as Matt mentioned, of course, there's a Q&A. Again, feel free to throw some questions in there, and those on the board that are keeping an eye on that, feel free to pipe up if a question is topical to the topic in question. All right, so moving very swiftly along here, we're moving into major projects. So again, we're going to hear from, I believe, Dustin and Pat, if my memory serves me from today. We'll start off with Dustin.
Sure, thanks, Dave. All right, so on the Climate in Parks campaign that was just mentioned previously, just a very kind of quick overview and update. So the background here, as was made clear by no bolting and no climbing signs that went up in Devil's Glen Park, provincial park policy around climbing is widely inconsistent, and that's created a bit of problems. And so there was quite a diverse array of permission of climbing. So as a response, in large part to those signs going up at Devil's Glen, we initiated a letter writing campaign. We consulted with a lobbyist for guidance on our approach. With the power of the community, over 3,000 letters were sent to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. And we were able to gain a good bit of awareness through press publications, both at the local, provincial level. As a result, we've made good relationships with the ministry. The removal of the no climbing signs at Devil's Glen have been removed, and the ministry, Ontario Parks, and the Ontario Alliance of Climbers are now working in collaboration to get climbing plans in place for Devil's Glen, Lion's Head as a start, but ideally all provincial parks eventually. And these plans with the primary objective of making sure that there is good balance between recreational opportunity for Ontarians conservation of the parks, which is obviously an important factor, and the economic benefits that climbing can bring to the local communities. So this is a win-win-win for parks, for climbers, for all Ontarians, as we continue to kind of work towards those management plans coming into place. That's a quick overview. I am happy to take questions or comments. I think, Dave, remind me, I think we have like a couple minutes where we can take questions now, and then maybe we'll save some for the end, or are we saving them all for the end?
I would just say, yeah, if you've got a question, feel free to throw it in the Q&A right now. Maybe we'll just leave it a minute or so just to see if any pops in. And then otherwise, if any other questions arise throughout the rest of the event, we'll bring it back to you, Dustin, at the end.
Sure.
Maybe I'll just take a quick moment here. It's been interesting. So I've joined as a volunteer in the last year or so, having been a member for a number of years. And it's been really cool to see Dustin and the rest of the board working in the Climate Parks campaign, and certainly the professionalism that the board has brought to this particular project, but also like the community outreach that has happened as a result of that. And, you know, just looking at the attendees and recognizing some of the names there, you know, we recognize that clearly our community is the one that has really driven the outreach of the Climate Parks campaign. We wouldn't have 3,000 letters, of course, without all of your hard work as well. So we do really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Great point. It doesn't look like we're getting any questions, but feel free to drop them in and I can always answer later, and that way we can keep the show moving. And I am going to pass it off to, I believe, a question did come up. It's just as I was get away from it. Sorry, I'll read out the question. Has the OAC's approach to climbing management plans changed? Example, management plans can be fairly complex and involved specifically with government. Yeah, so I'll say that in the role that the OAC is playing with the ministry and Ontario Parks, we are helping consult on those plans, but ultimately, you know, the ministry are professional policymakers. This is their wheelhouse. And I will also add that we've worked with a number of landowners across Southern Ontario that where we have acted in similar accordances of both consulting on policy for climbing, as well as, you know, environmental considerations that those landowners are working for. And I can think specifically about conservation areas as well as the Niagara Glen and et cetera. We generally help, you know, specifically around like the climbing information, because a lot of times land managers, they just don't know much about climbing and they have a lot of questions. There's language they need to learn, you know, literally kind of understanding the ropes, so to say. Obviously, always some of their concerns are centralized around liability and safety. And so there are many frameworks from both across the province and across Canada and frankly the world that can act as proxies and examples of great liability management, great safety management. And we aggregate those and bring them forward and then try to pick out the best examples for what that land manager is trying to do. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to write more in the chat. Jonathan, has the letter writing campaign ended or is it continued? Great question. Great question, Jonathan. It is continuing. We have stopped pushing so hard on our end on the awareness, not because we're stopping the letter writing campaign, and we very much so encourage you to continue to write letters. We've actually updated the letter on the website to be more appropriate to the current situation. The reason why we're not pushing so hard on promoting the letter writing campaign is because we have shifted our attentions that we have to working with the ministry on the management plans themselves. As you may be aware, in Ontario, we had a cabinet shuffle at the beginning of, or a few weeks ago, might have been early October-ish. And so the Minister of the Environment, Conservation and Parks was one individual. There's now a new individual in that role. And so we have shifted to now work with that individual instead. And the letter is now reflecting that new individual being in that role. So it is still very much so live. And that minister will get that letter if you so choose to write it. We are now working with the new minister and the ministry in order to continue to move things forward. Melissa, do we expect the change in minister of, oh, good question. I just answered this, to affect the current management plan and process? Long story short, No, what generally from our research and our work with the lobbyist, when a new minister comes into a role that's already in progress, unless there's significant change that needs to happen, they usually pick up the ball where the old minister left off. Your concern was our concern too. When the ministers did change roles, we made sure to quickly get in contact with the new minister. We had like a conversation literally on the phone to get reassurance that the plan was to continue moving forward. And so far, the new minister, Minister Kanjan, has shown, support for the same things that the previous minister, Minister Puccini, and their rationale for wanting to have, a good balance of recreation, conservation, and economic opportunity. So we're, long story short, still moving forward. I will say it probably did slow us down a bit. There was a bit of turbulence within the government, and but we're still moving forward. Okay, I think that's all the questions. So again, hopefully that helps. Yes.
Thanks, Dustin.
Oh,
that
no
was me just thanking you for a great job.
Anytime.
Yes, exactly. So onward. So I think this is over to Pat now to talk about the annual membership program.
Yes. Thanks, Dave. So we've shown in the last year that the OAC has done a lot, especially with this climbing in parks campaign that Dustin has led. And it's a professional organization. Look, we get results, and we are a volunteer-driven organization. In the past, it has been the case that, in particular, Mountain Equipment Co-op, and in its co-op form, did provide us with some operating funding. They no longer exist. And so we're in a situation now where we feel that relying on corporate donations is not a good strategy for funding our ongoing operations. And so the board has agreed that to support the ongoing operations of the OAC, we'd like to introduce a new active member category. And we are going to price that category at $20 per year, which is in line with other climbing access organizations. And so Dave Irwin has done the homework, and he's done a whole scan of all the other organizations in Canada, and $20 a year is pretty much in line with everyone else. Like there's just one other organization that offers lifetime memberships. And so that implies, of course, an inactive category. And so if you haven't paid in the past year, then you would be an inactive category. But we've made a promise to people that you've signed up for a lifetime membership for the OAC. And so we're not going to go back on that promise. And so both active and inactive members will retain voting rights with the OAC. And the reason, we think that there's really good reason to do this. As I said, we can't really count on corporate support. And the membership fees will at least cover our operating costs. We have to pay the bills, even if it's just all volunteers, and provide some more certainty to pay for things like the spring fling, and to provide seed capital for the climbing festival, which we hope to get going next year. We also fund things like the Metcalf porta potty. We might want to expand it, insurance and technology. And as we get more members, that gives us more capacity as well to pay for more initiatives as well in the future. And so the change here is that we are moving from a system where we rely on corporate sponsors, and we move from that to a system where the OAC's membership, will support our core initiatives. And so I hope that we can have your support as we do that change. Take questions about that, and yeah, take questions about that. The question is, has there been any recent reach out to Mountain Equipment Company? They're trying to rebuild their relationship with the outdoor community. I haven't looked in the past month. Before that, the new MEC was looking at supporting national initiatives, and the OAC is a provincial initiative. And so I think that we've been in contact with people, although I don't know how recently. But certainly we do look from time to time to see what they currently have going on for donations. But for me, it's like, look, we're kind of always at their mercy, and I don't really like being in that situation. I think it's a healthier situation for us to be dependent on our members. I of course, if we get more money, then that's also good. And so we should certainly pursue that avenue as well. But I would like to principally rely on members. The active members, we have not launched it yet. We are going to launch it for the new year. So maybe I should have mentioned that. It's just coming, and we thought that the AGM, we would provide you with advance notice of this change that's coming. It'll be the same sign up link. It'll just be, you'll get a 1-year active membership instead of a lifetime membership. Will there be a discounted price for long-standing members to be an active member? No.
I don't think you need to expand on that.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Thanks. Okay, Melissa asks the question, will we still offer lifetime memberships or moving to just active? And so what we anticipate happening is you get your 1-year active membership, and we appreciate your support of the organization, and then you become an inactive member. We would like you to be active members every year, but you will still be a member is my understanding of how we will set that up. That was a comment and not a question from Ken Chase about MEC burdening a lot of people with the corporate handover, but we will.
So I just want to comment on this, on the launch of this, because this is a long time coming for the OAC. This is something that we have discussed internally for a very long time, and something that we all knew we were kind of moving towards as we see other local access organizations across various other recreational disciplines move into that direction. And I think what we're trying to do here is to ensure that those of us who have been members for a very long time, we're not devaluing that that membership, that effort, that kinship that we've all expressed to each other as a member of this group. This is about trying to do more, and this is about providing an opportunity for each of us, including those of us who sit on the board, an opportunity to be part of the solution. And so I think the question hasn't been asked, but a good question that will be asked as we go through this process is, what do we plan to spend the money on? And those are very good questions, and I think we can probably expand upon that further, as well as make that a little bit more clear when we launch this program. But really, this is about coming to the table with solutions, and a larger bag of solutions when we sit down with landowners, when we sit down with partners, and when we think about what are the things that are going to be needed in the spaces that we recreate in that are going to ensure that they're sustainable, that they're safe, and that they're for everybody. So hopefully that provides a little bit of additional context.
Thanks, Mike. It was really important to me not to disenfranchise anyone, and so that's why we proposed that both active and inactive members retain voting rights. But we would really encourage you, as soon as it opens, to become an active member of the OAC. It's an opportunity to support the ongoing operations and have more money so that we can fund things.
Cool. Thanks, Pat. Again, if any other questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A section. Otherwise, I think, Pat, you're continuing on.
All right, next slide then. This is just a quick slide. The only other thing I have to say is please do the annual survey. We got several hundred responses last time in 2021 that we ran it. Once again, we're curious to know what you think about the OAC. And so as engaged OAC members, we ask you, please do our annual survey right after the AGM. We haven't even announced it. You are the first to hear about it. So here it is. Please do it. Thanks.
Thanks, Pat. Awesome. So now moving into what we'd call maybe our Crag updates. And this year we've separated into 3 different categories. Southwest Ontario, covering primarily the Niagara Escarpment. Eastern Ontario, where we've got Jim Clark representing from Ottawa. And then we've got sort of a larger Northern Ontario, which we realize Northern Ontario is very large, but some folks from Sudbury as well as Thunder Bay to represent in that area. And again, just another quick comment, I think it's great that we've got representatives from across Ontario with projects like Climbing Parks kicking off, where really the province is acting together to expand and retain climbing access. And so it's that much more important to hear from folks across the province. All right, so Southwest Ontario, and we'll rattle these off. There's maybe about 7 or 8 for Southwest Ontario. We're kicking off with Mike on Rockwood.
Thanks, Dave. All right, I won't spend too much time given the volume of updates we have. I am feeling a little bit outgunned by the great pictures that we've got coming up in the later part of the presentation, but you'll have to use your imagination as I go through some of my updates. So Rockwood, Grand River Conservation Authority unfortunately made the unprecedented step in June of moving forward and removing all routes from Rockwood. This is something that is unprecedented, terrible. You fill in the blank. I won't spend any time dwelling on it, but essentially what they have done is they have taken a stand against rock climbing, digging their heels in, and did pay for rope access technicians to come in there and to remove all of the routes. So needless to say, we've got lots of work to do at Rockwood if ever we are to crack that nut. There is a volunteer group that is associated with the OAC or connected with the OAC that is looking to slowly begin that process again, and are planning in 2024 to perform a delegation in front of the board, expressing concern, educating the board on climbing safety, and trying to build on the momentum that we have had with Ontario Parks. And so what I've done is just dropped in some names here that you can express your concerns to. If you haven't seen this already in our social media or on our communications, here they are. You can shoot them a note. But that's it for Rockwood.
I'm talking on mute here. Thanks, Mike. Pat, you're up next. Turtle.
Yeah. Oh, I thought I forgot about that. So Turtle's good. Landowner is happy. We've actually heard reports sometimes that there's more than 12 people. And we had discussions about that. We would ask you, if you see more than 12 people, there should not be more than 12 people at the Turtle. And we can't have that. So if you're comfortable with having a friendly chat with the more than 12 people that you might see at the Turtle. So we have a booking system if you don't happen to know that. And so the booking system allows 12 people to sign up per day. So if there are more than 12 people, and some people didn't sign up. Landowner's pleased with us. And indeed, we've even spotted the landowner out climbing at the Crag. The most important thing to keep in mind at the Turtle is be very, very quiet, right? The landowner should not hear you. You're in his backyard. Please continue to get a permit. And I think most of the time we're pretty good. Sometimes we've exceeded 12. Most times we're pretty good. And so let's try to continue being better stewards of this land that is graciously shared by the landowner. He doesn't have to, right? There's nothing in it for him to let us climb there, and he does. And so we are greatly appreciative of that. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Pat. Moving on to Camden. Dustin.
Thanks, Dave. All right, so Campton, which is also known as Cave Springs Conservation Area, we have had a great conversation, productive, consistently good throughout the year. The Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority, which oversees Cave Springs, is currently in the management renewal plans. As part of these management renewal plans, if you've been there, they've done a lot of work, put in some infrastructure near the bottom of that conservation area. Included in these plans is the inclusion of rock climbing. So there is some things that we've been working through with with the NPCA, including conservation for bat populations and specific ferns. We've worked through safety and rescue. The next steps here is to be approved by the Niagara Escarpment Commission, which oversees the NPCA. That is estimated in the spring of 2024. Cave Springs Conservation Authority has also reached out to us and asked for volunteers to be help with trail building, signage, and route finding, which is estimated to take place also in the spring of 2024. So look out for a call for volunteers in that area to go down there and help out Cave Springs continue to develop towards rock climbing. That's it from Campton.
Thanks, Dustin. Devil's Glen, Mike Penny, and you're continuing on with Lion's Head as well.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so Dustin already shared some updates with regards to Devil's Glen, that is, and Lion's Head as well. That's tied into our Climb in Parks campaign, and so we are very happy to share again that climbing is welcomed at Devil's Glen, and that is, I think, sometimes confused or unknown because of all of the turmoil or challenges that we have had there over the last 6 months to a year. So please, please go and recreate there if you haven't already, and let your friends know that it is open to climbing. So myself and Dustin performed a walkthrough with Ontario Parks with the framework in mind of showing and communicating how climbers use that area, what's important to us, and how much we value that space. And so the OAC and Ontario Parks, we continue to have discussions on how to balance recreation, conservation, and economic opportunities. And we expect to share with you some great news in the coming year as management plans are updated for both Devil's Glen and for Lion's Head. So for Lion's Head, we did also perform a walkthrough of both the top and the bottom with Ontario Parks, again, focused on how climbers enjoy the area and what is required in terms of building strong and robust management plans that include and enable rock climbing. So we have been talking to them as well at some of with them in terms of some of the concerns we have and some of the improvements that we can make to the area to ensure that climbing is safe and that the space is welcoming for climbers. So you can see here we've got the opportunity to put some no throwing rocks signage up, and I think that's something that's going to be important as Lion's Head is certainly not getting any less busy even post-COVID. So those are the updates for Devil's Glen and Lion's Head.
Awesome. Thanks, Mike. And again, feel free to throw questions in the Q&A. I'm up next. So just a couple quick updates on Eagle's Nest, which we certainly saw a little bit more activity on this particular summer. And for those that aren't familiar, clearly Eagle's Nest has both rock and ice climbing. And so it's got some relevance to both communities. So ultimately, there's 3 properties that have placed no climbing or no trespassing signs. I believe 2 of those have placed signs up this year, whereas the other was sort of a long-standing no climbing property, where really the latest closure in 2023 has affected 221 Hastings, which is where I think the noted climb Finger Stinger is located. So really the action post those initial sign postings really was the OAC has reached out to some of our real estate professionals and legal experts looking for some help and advice in terms of really who owns the property. And so that process has been has been taking place over the last couple of weeks, where we pulled title documents to understand who are the owners. And I think Randy's going to keep me honest here. We just got results back actually in the last week, where it does look like the majority, if not all, of these property lines either abut or overlap with the cliff base. And so really, again, I think us as the OEC is going to take that back and sort of figure out next steps. I mean, the challenge, of course, is that it is private property. And so, it does limit in terms of, let's say, the township's ability to influence. And ultimately, again, it leads us into sort of conversations with private landowners, which ultimately, because there's many of them along that cliff base, does produce challenges as well. And so I think the silver lining here is that, the town of Bancroft and the township overall does remain quite positive to both rock and ice climbing activities. And so I'll be looking to leverage that over the next couple of months to take this forward. I don't know, Randy, if you have any other quick comments there, but.
Nope, that covers it. Thank you.
Thanks. Awesome. Moving swiftly along. We've covered Southwest Ontario, and now we're on to Eastern Ontario, which, again, a large part of the province, but we're going to hand this over to Jim Clark to give a regional update. And for those that aren't familiar, Jim has been very active in this particular region and heads up, I think it's Ottawa Crag Care. Is that, give me a nod there?
That's correct.
There we go. So been in a lot of route development, a lot of community building out there, and we're really happy to have him present with us tonight. So over to you, Jim.
Thank you. So I'm Jim Clark. We're with Ottawa Crag. Unfortunately, we don't have nearly the access issues as these folks around Toronto because most of our climbs are on Crown land. But anyway, so we've managed over the last few years to almost double the amount of sport routes around here. It's been a bit of a renaissance in rock climbing. Most of those routes are on Crown land. So just going through, most of our efforts are around Calabogie in the greater Madawaska area and in northern Frontenac, again around Calabogie. And we're hoping to expand that as we move along. So at Calabogie, there's at least 70 new sport routes and a bunch of old trad routes been resurrected from the annals of time, and 60 new boulders, although I hear that number's up to 120 now, particularly around Sullivan Lake. And then there's enormous space for new climbs. There's at least 3 completely untouched cliffs around Calabogie, Mount Dickinson area. A couple of years ago, there was almost no parking at Calabogie, and then of course, COVID hit, and everybody wanted to go outside, and the road had hundreds of cars parked on it, and kids playing in the middle of an 80-kilometer-an-hour street. So I reached out to the township and convinced them into building a giant parking lot that can support over 100 cars, has toilets and all kinds of things. And I suggested they put a small user fee on it. That parking lot now generates more revenue for the township than any other single source they have. And it's a massive success. And there's no kids playing in the middle of the road anymore. So near Calabogie, there's a ski hill that owns about half the mountain. They also own almost the entirety of one cliff. With the OAC's guidance and help, we had a few conversations with those landowners. Eventually, the conversations petered out because their lawyers weren't willing to entertain any of the risks. But that was the official answer. Shortly after we stopped those conversations, the owner of the ski hill reached out to me and said that go ahead and use it, just don't ask and don't tell. And then shortly thereafter, they put up some no trespassing, use at your own risk signs. So I consider that a pretty big private property win with the OAC support. And that cliff hosts about 40 to 50 rock climbs, and most of them, and it's a really nice cliff, very vertical, a little bit overhanging, pretty rare on our really old Canadian Shield. So a lot of you've probably heard about the Cave of Wonders. We found that early this year, and Joe Skopik, bringing his Stoke, managed to get a bunch of developers out there, and there's now 36 new hard climbs up there. It's an incredible piece of rock, massive overhanging cliff, roofs and stuff. And he's put up one of the hardest lines in Ontario at 14. I'm going to say C, just the amount of work he had to put into it. We also found another massive pile of boulders that are probably bigger than if any of you've ever been to the Calabogie's main bouldering area. This area is probably about twice that size. There's, I think, 120 new boulders there now. 60. This was a couple of weeks ago when I said 60. So that's our new development. There's a lot of new stuff up here. Of course, most of our stuff's on Crown land, which has a lot less access issues, but the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry did reach out to me unofficially. Climbing is on their radar. They're aware of the activities, and they're keeping tabs on things. So yeah, big shout out to Alex for stomping around North Frontenac, finding all these cliffs. We have some close private property, of course. Morton Rock, Little Blue Mountain, Castle Black, all closed. Don't know if there's any active efforts to open any of them. Castle Black being the biggest loss there. Potential for a lot of really excellent climbing. We have our own host of conservative conservation authorities. The Rideau Waterway Trust controls Rock Dunder. It's a relatively small cliff, but it would be nice. And they have an official no climbing stance. We have some Ontario parks, which will hopefully see some management plan changes in the coming years. Frontenac and Algonquin probably having the most opportunity for good climbing. Not quite Ontario, but National Capital Commission controls Gatineau Park. It's a very, very Ottawa problem. And as most of you probably know, Gatineau Park is almost entirely closed to climbing, with only, I think, 30 or 40 climbs open officially. And Parks Canada controls Landon's Bay, which is another impressive overhanging wall. And that is all closed, and those bolts have also been removed by paid rope access workers. Next slide. Here's some pictures of Maria, one of my rock climbing partners, helping scrub lichen off of Lake Cliff, putting up a new 10A, I believe that one was, and a picture of Joe pulling a crazy move at a roof at a cliff called Skywalk, which is near Calabogie. And next slide. I think there's one more. We've got 2 shots of crystal bouldering, and one of those is at the main bouldering area at Calabogie, and the other is at Sullivan Lake. I believe there's one more slide. Yes, community initiative. So we've got a yearly boulder bash at Calabogie. I think we had 120 people turn out this year, which makes it really big. It was awesome. The entire swamp was filled with bouldering pads and people. And it was prime leaf season, so that's the parking lot in the background, and we filled it up. Local Legends is something we run in the winter. We all get together at a pub and put on a big slideshow where we have a couple of presenters talk about their climbing exploits. If you want more information, Ottawa Crag Care, the website's there, and and if you want help out with our bolt fund, there's a link there that you can send donations to. Those bolts go towards moderates that are accessible to everyone, and they are publicly posted on what's the website? Oh my, on online links on Crag Care. Can't believe I can't remember. Anyway, they're all publicly posted as soon as they're safe to climb. That's everything I got. Any questions?
That's awesome, Jim. Thanks so much. Well, just give it a minute if any questions. I'll admit I'm actually going to Ottawa this weekend and hoping the weather turns out on Friday so I can get up to Calabogie myself.
Nice. We have lots of great climbing if you haven't been here. We're not that far from Toronto. By the time you've driven to your climbs out there and waited in line for them, probably put in half a day up here.
Oh, come now. All right. Well, again, of course, as always, feel free to throw in questions and we can always come back to Jim at the end. Thanks, Jim. All right. So moving a little bit north. So again, we've got both a Sudbury update and a Thunder Bay update. So we're going to start out with Laura and Marco from Sudbury. Over to Laura.
Hi, all. I'm Laura. I don't recognize a lot of the names on the call, so nice to meet you. I'm going to do most of the speaking, but I also just want to welcome my partner, Marco, who is also a panelist on the call. And we are basically the 2 humans behind Climb Sudbury, which is the free online guidebook to all of the rock and ice and trad and sport and bouldering in the area generally. We are generally a tiny community with tiny problems. So this will be and tiny crags, and will just be a small little update about some of those. Most of them are based right in the Sudbury area. Timberwolf, I like to always shout out because they are our success story in the north. This is one of our crags, generally a more beginner-oriented crag that is owned by Conservation Sudbury Land, and which we have a very positive relationship with. They not only tolerate, but accept and proudly shout out and celebrate climbing on their land. They will show climbing photos in their social media. They will share events that we have organized. They will collaborate with us on crag cleanups, and they now have a good working relationship with Art Climbing, the gym in Sudbury, so that the gym can actually offer gym to crag courses, outdoor climbing courses, outdoor social climbs, and anchor building courses on their property, which is a phenomenal development and a huge benefit to the folks in our community. So big shout out to them. Echo Crag is one of our more popular sport crags. We have had a lot of traffic from Southern Ontario over the pandemic years. This crag is very tiny and it is not on Crown land. So we just want to remind all folks visiting to really follow the leave no trace principles and generally just leave as little presence as possible on a lot of our areas, because they are not all on Crown land. And even if they are, we like to take care of those areas. This area has seen a few more spider trails, and there's a lot of overchalking and not brushing roots. So generally just more signs of presence than usual. We are always super welcoming of people visiting this area. If you'd like a tour or you'd like someone to show you around, we are happy to bring people out. There's always someone to connect with, and we just want to remind people to be super respectful, particularly at this crag, because it's starting to see signs of use. Bethel is one of our in-town local crags. It's like a beautiful 5-minute drive for some short sport climbing over the water. We've had some weird circumstances this year, like a theft of shuts and hardware we've installed, as well as adding hardware to the tops of climbs. This is a very residential, easily seen area. So generally good practice up north is not to remove any hardware. If you do notice anything that's loose or needs fixing, if you message the Climb Sudbury site, most of us, Marco can usually get to it within a day or two. And then generally our ethic up north is to ask permission from the developer before modifying or altering any climb in any way. So that includes moving anchors, adding anchors to climbs and things like that. So just some activities we're noticing at Bethel that I wanted to make mention of. The Gold Mine and Nooks area is a massive bouldering area, and a huge shout out to Brendan, who I believe I saw in the attendees on this call. This is more than we can add to the website, and I know even that the area's expanded beyond his lovely guidebook that he put out. So I highly recommend you look him up on Instagram and contact him if you'd like information on climbing in the area. Climb Sudbury fully supports all these developments and tries to assist in any way. Some of the endeavors that we've been involved in are putting thunder boxes in the areas and just helping Brendan get the word out about these areas and mapping them out and including what we can on the site. And as well, Arctos is a new area, trad and sport on schist, that's been developed over the past 2 to 3 years. By a number of individuals, including Marco and a couple friends of ours, Matt and Karen Gunther. This has been a nice opening because it's north of North Bay, so it lends to a bit of climbing in that community area, which was lacking up until that time, and otherwise provides a really nice road trip for folks from Sudbury if they want to get out to a place that kind of looks like Middle Earth and is really nice spot to camp and swim and climb. A note on general access and things going on. Many crags in the Sudbury and northern areas are on Crown land. However, a few of our popular spots in the north are privately owned, and true access status is either unknown, tolerated, or currently unopposed by the landowner. So by that, we mean they are either unaware that climbing is taking place, or they are aware and just tacitly permissive that climbing is taking place on their property. Some of these are commercial landowners, some of these are mining company landowners. So we just want to remind visitors in the area that if you visit Bethel, Echo, Timberwolf, and Quirk especially, to always be on best behavior so that our access doesn't become contested. We are a small community that doesn't tend to overcrowd crags, but we really are trying to take the best preventative measures we can so that we can continue climbing in these beautiful areas. I'm just looking at some comments, details on the thunder boxes from Climb Sudbury. Yeah, so Jess shared the correct address. You can email us at climbsudbury@outlook or drop a message in the contact box for us, and that goes to both Marco and I, and we can answer those questions for you. We'll go to the next slide. I will just update you now on a few of the community endeavors that we have going on. The gym, I just want to shout out so many people in the north who contributed to the letter writing campaign. We had a nice little get together at the Arc Climbing Gym where we had lovely community volunteers set us up with about 8 laptops. We had snacks, we had a little bit of a climbing social, and a lot of involvement in the letter writing campaign. Additionally, we have purchased the license for Girls Gone Hueco, and we will be screening that at ARC on November 18th. I have not put the word out yet on our social media, so you guys are the first to hear that. And all of the proceeds are going to support Climb Sudbury, so thanks in advance for anyone who purchased a ticket. We also really want to shout out Art Climbing as well, because as those courses that I mentioned outdoors, as I mentioned, when you can take outdoor climbing socials, outdoor climbing instructional courses, and anchor building courses all at Timberwolf through Art Climbing, and they've built into the cost of each of these programs a small donation that goes to Climb Sudbury, so that when we have local climbers climb at the gym and take any of those gym to Crag outdoor courses, a part of your program cost is actually going to support Climb Sudbury. So really thankful to Art Climbing for spearheading that campaign for us. And we will also be having a t-shirt campaign coming soon. We've had a lot of people ask about our classic long sleeve shirt, and we have a local artist who has designed a really beautiful illustration that will be printed on some limited edition t-shirts to celebrate 5 years of Climb Sudbury, which is now like 7 because we just didn't get the t-shirts printed on time. But stay tuned for that. I encourage people in Southern Ontario to purchase as well, and we can try to drop off for you. This is a huge moneymaker for us. It goes a long way in terms of what we can do with the funds. And our current update is that Climb Sudbury's fund for hardware, Crag maintenance, and generally just the provision of the free online guide via the website is fully funded by the community for operations through 2027. We are always appreciative of ongoing donations, and this can be accomplished through the PayPal on our website or by e-transfer to the email address below. We are just 2 humans. We are not a nonprofit or a corporation. We're just 2 humans trying to put in time and work on your behalf and behalf of all of the climbers in the north. So we really rely on those donations to keep going. You can support us in many ways, and you can reach us in many ways. ClimbSudbury.com has all of the route info and maps and generally access status. We do note if there's a private property. We are working on some endeavors, such as up in the north, there's often not cell phone reception. We are aiming to provide links and locations in case of an accident that you can access cell phone service. So little informational capabilities like that. General site updates happening with the continual development there. At Climb Sudbury on Instagram is anything new and in the moment. So if we've added bolts, fixed hardware, put up new routes, added community events, we're hosting things, or just climber community photos, that can all be found on our social media. And then Climb Sudbury at outlook.com, or just dropping a message in the contact box on the website. You can instantly access both of us, and we try to reply on time. Marco is much better at that. I barely text or email my friends, so he will get back to you for sure. And both of us look forward to connecting with you. So that's it for my little update. Thanks, guys. If you haven't visited Sudbury for climbing, hope you come and visit sometime in the future. Connect with us, and we're happy to take you out.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Laura. That's fantastic. All right, and I think for our last presenter, we've got Eric Fishman, and hopefully Eric will give it a little background. Clearly, Eric is not in his home office there, so I think he's calling in from distant lands. So Eric, over to you. And you're on mute if you're talking. Maybe it's just you're so far away, we lose your signal.
I'm so far. Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave. I appreciate that. As you can probably see, I'm in my van here, just on a little road trip in the desert in Utah, and I'm happy to join you all to give a little update about the Thunder Bay region. You can maybe see my doggie's toesies over here. She's just chilling beside me. But yeah, just a little bit about me in case you don't know who I am. I'm Eric Fishman. I run Outdoor Skills and Thrills. It's a guiding company up in Thunder Bay, Ontario, that does rock and ice climbing. I also wrote the guidebook for the region, Thunder Bay Climbing. And I'm the director of the Nipigon Ice Fest, which is Canada's longest running ice climbing festival. So there's a lot happening up in T-Bay. One thing that's really awesome is that we have a lot of cliffs. Like, we have tons of rock, and a lot of it is on Crown land, so we're very fortunate about that. But like anywhere, everywhere has access issues. So I wanted to just kind of highlight some of the ups and the downs that we've been experiencing lately. And there's a big gap between Sudbury and Thunder Bay. There's a lot of rock. Hopefully in future meetings, we'll be able to get even more people that can help represent some other areas like Sault Ste. Marie area, Batchewana Bay. I know Sean Parent has been working hard to get a lot of climbs developed there. But for Thunder Bay region, one big thing that's happened in recent years is there's a ton of climbs on First Nations land, right beside Thunder Bay, the city itself. So a lot of climbs that are developed on cliffs like at Crescent Lake, at Mount Godfrey, Brule Bay, which was formerly known as Squaw Bay, and Lost Falls. There's been no trespassing signs that have gone up. Not recently, but there's more and more that have been going up. And so, although there isn't an official stance that myself or some others have been able to figure out if climbing is permitted or not permitted, the no trespassing signs do kind of give a clear message that climbing isn't openly welcome. So what I've tried to do in my guidebook is outline that very well. And also on my website, noting a lot of people go to my website for information, outdoorskillsandthrills.com, and I make sure to outline where, just as things are getting updated, what the most up-to-date information is. So that's one thing. A lot of climbs that are really awesome. We've been respecting, at least all of us in Northwest Ontario, we're kind of avoiding those crags as a way to try to build upon relations in the future. So that's one thing. If you're heading up to Thunder Bay area, it's just best to avoid those crags. Grey Wolf is an absolutely stellar cliff that's very unique in the way that it looks. It's almost like it's painted rock. It's just really beautiful and quite tall. We haven't had too many issues in the past. The land that we hike in on is on private property for a portion of it before it gets onto Crown land. And during COVID, the landowners decided that they just didn't want people coming and going. And that sort of hasn't lifted. It hasn't been resolved yet. So myself and a couple of others have been actively trying to figure out how to regain access, maybe create a new trail system, figuring out better parking, stuff like that, so that it doesn't interfere with the landowners at all, and so that we can essentially just walk a little bit on the private property in order to get to the Crown land. So that's essentially the most up-to-date info about Grey Wolf, is that it's still an ongoing process. A couple of other beautiful areas that are absolutely fantastic: Sleeping Giant Provincial Park and We Met Canyon Provincial Park. There's been no climbing permitted at those two provincial parks for a long time now, and that hasn't changed. It would be awesome to see that change in the future. It's kind of like some people think that it's not necessary to just leave those as is, because we have so much climbing, to be honest, that it's not a big loss in terms of like being able to access climbing. However, it would just be, I mean, those cliffs are like magnificent. So it would just be cool to somehow work together with land managers in order to come to some kind of agreement to be able to access it, because hikers are able to access it, and other user groups as well. So it would just be cool to add climbers into the mix if that's doable, although not necessary. Another one, you may have seen a picture of a cool tower. That's called the Dorian Tower. And that's a really awesome climb that kind of showcases Northwest Ontario a little bit. It's kind of like people are like, oh, yeah, Thunder Bay, have you done the Dorian Tower? It's a really magnificent climb. One thing I've noticed, I take people there quite often with my guiding service, and it's getting, not that we're not able to access it, but the road itself is in such disrepair and getting so rough that it's just becoming very difficult to access that area because of that reason. So I've been trying personally to reach out to the township of Dorian, as well as the people who own the road to get in, which is owned by a hydro company. And nobody really wants to take responsibility for repairing it. So I'm trying to figure out now, my next step is to figure out how to go about it myself. I think that's what's going to have to happen, is just to invest into some, I don't even know how it's done. I'm going to have to speak to some people, but just to repair that road so that people can keep accessing those beautiful cliffs. And they're on Crown land as well, so it would be nice to continue accessing them. The next cliff that I want to chat about is Claghorn. It has probably the hardest climbs in the region established there. It's a magnificent, it's about 1.5 kilometers of cliff line. It's about 30 meters tall, up to about 40 to 50 meters. Beautiful cliff. We don't really have access issues there, aside from one section of the cliff, which is on private property. And the landowner, I've been communicating with him for years in order to get the most up-to-date info for the guidebook. And more recently, he sent an email sort of saying that he's not sure if he wants to keep allowing access on that portion of the cliff. So that's something that's going to be, we're going to have some chats back and forth and try to figure it out. What's the best course of action? But on the plus side, we still have lots of cliffs. The majority of the climbs are actually on Crown land there. So, you know, I think it's always best to figure out with landowners who own the properties how to work together, essentially, so that everybody's happy. And that's always the goal. But in the end, I think that it's also important to respect landowners' wishes. If they decide that they don't want climbers there, then to make it very clear. And that's where either through my website or the guidebook or the Facebook page for Thunder Bay Climbers, that's where we like to keep everybody updated on that info. So if you're going to come visit Thunder Bay, I would say just reach out before you come if you're specifically looking to climb at one of these cliffs that I've mentioned. Yeah, some other cliffs that are worth mentioning. Climbers Cliffs. I didn't include it in the most recent edition of my guidebook because the landowner isn't sure that she's dealing with a lot of other things right now on a personal level, and she wasn't sure if she wanted to open it up to climbers. In the past, it was that climbers would be able to sign a waiver form and then access the property. And hopefully that's what will be able to happen again in the future. But as of for now, it's closed. It's essentially closed to climbing. Again, which is okay, considering how much cliffs we have. Caribou Island has been designated as a conservation preserve. So although we were able to access it way in the past, over 10 years ago. It hasn't been climbing hasn't been allowed there for a number of years, and that hasn't changed. Orient Bay, you've seen a couple of pictures throughout this presentation of these magnificent looking cliffs with beautiful vistas. Some of those have been from Orient Bay. It's a stellar climbing area that's quite well known both for rock and ice. And there's a lot of development happening there, a lot of updates to old routes and some new routes as well. A lot of people that are listening in, whether you're attendees or on the panel itself, have been coming up to the Thunder Bay region to enjoy even specifically just Orient Bay. I know Dustin has a place in his heart for Orient Bay when he comes up every year now. So a lot of new routes have been going up there. Yeah, that's about all that needs to be said. You can keep an eye on all the new route developments that are going on there. There's a lot of really good multi-pitch routes. This past season, routes that have gone up to 513 are going up. Everything from easy to hard. So it's a great place to go check out. Pass Lake I added on this list because it's worth mentioning. It's the only sandstone cliff in Ontario that has well-developed climbing on it. Tons of sport routes. People love. It's right off the road. You have like a 30-second approach, and there's a ton of climbs there to enjoy. What's really awesome is that one of our local climbing legends, Jody Bernst, he actually purchased that cliff in order to secure it for climbers. The land went up for sale, and he bought it right away as just as a means to keep it open to climbers. So I think that's a really awesome thing that was able to happen because it's quite a unique cliff. I released the latest edition of the Thunder Bay Climbing Guidebook this spring. You should totally pick it up. It's really awesome. I'm very proud of it. It's got over 900 climbs listed, full color. It's really big. That's something that's a really good update as well to worth mentioning is that there's all the info of all the new routes up to this spring is in that book, and all of the access information for all the crags are as well in there. So pick up your copy if you're going to come to the Thunder Bay region and see what there really is to enjoy. There's a ton. I've also been diligently keeping for many years now any new route that goes up. I publish on my website, outdoorskillsandthrills.com. So there's a new routes and updates page that I have on that website where you can see all the stuff that's been going on. I've been on the road now for a couple of months, so I haven't updated it in a little bit because I'm in the desert. But there's, like this season, over 60 routes that have gone up that I've sport, trad, everything from 5-6 as the easiest up to 513. So I'll be updating that soon, and next season you'll be able to see all that there is there. So pick up the book and look at the new routes page. You can also.
I was going to say, just in the interest of time, just maybe a couple more minutes here, just so we have some time for Q&A at the end here. Thanks.
Sounds great. You could find me on Instagram at outdoor_skills. Reach out anytime you want. Ask anything you'd like. You could find me on Facebook, Eric Fishman, or on my Outdoor Skills and Thrills page, or the public page, Thunder Bay Climbers, where you can ask the general community anything you want and see what's going on. Next slide, please. A couple pictures just to show you kind of like what I'm talking about here. Super awesome splitters on the left. That's me climbing a new route that I put up called Shadow Warrior. That's kind of like you'll just find super splitter climbs all over the place, and there's tons of those there. And the photo on the right is of my friend Rosalind climbing a route called the Swing of Things to 512 at Pass Lake. So you can kind of just see what the cliff looks like there. Next slide. With only a couple minutes, it's going to be hard, but let's just do this quick. Outbreak Wall. This is, I'll just say it's one of the coolest new developments in the region for sure. I discovered this cliff about 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago now. It's 2 kilometers long of perfect, beautiful, tall cliffs, all on Crown land, good parking, short hike. And we've been able, me and some friends have been able to put up well over 70 climbs there. Sport, trad, bouldering, it's got it all. And the stoke is really high right now in the region, and a lot of people are flocking to this cliff for development and for climbing. Worth checking out. Next slide, please. A little bit on new route development. Easy to say, it's happening all the time. Lots of climbs going up at all times, from easy to hard. That's me on the left, bolting an anchor at the Outbreak Wall, and the photo on the right is of Steve Charlton and Peter Song from Southern Ontario, who came up. They come up every year now. Steve's been coming up for like 20 plus years, and they're putting up a new route at Orient Bay. I think that's the last slide. Maybe there's one more.
That's it.
Sweet.
Thanks so much, Eric. Again, open it up. Any last questions here? Maybe just while we're doing here, again, just one more big thanks for Laura, Marco, Jim, and Eric for coming out, putting all that information together. Again, just reading through the comments here, it's pretty wild to see, again, all of the amazing updates that are happening across the province. And I think the one piece just for me that I'm taking away as well, like it is interesting to hear about these areas that really don't have that many climbers, at least from a concentration of total population compared to those of us in Southern Ontario, but that you're still starting to see, potential access problems that come up with private landowners. And so, things like climbing parks where we're dealing with provincial governments, and where many times, larger government bodies, typically we see that having an impact on sort of municipal bodies as well. And so all this is to say, I think it makes it so much more important to have received the support from all you folks on that campaign. So I think from there, it doesn't look like any specific questions that come out to you, Eric. So again, right now we're just going to open it up to general Q&A. So again, we've got our Q&A box. If you want to drop a question there. Otherwise, I think you can raise a hand and I can allow you to talk. I feel like I'm getting a real power trip here. So I can allow you to talk, and you can ask your question in video as well. So we'll give a couple minutes there just for you to pop questions in. Otherwise, if we don't have too many more questions, then we'll close it out in the next couple of minutes. So again, I'll pause there and give you all a nice awkward silence as we get some questions in. I agree, Laura. Killarney climbing would be very cool. Every time I hike the Crag, I think about it.
Always takes longer than you think to get questions.
Okay, I was gonna say, I was all set, Pat. Is everybody, maybe just everybody's really shy this evening. We have a question. All right, Brendan Bars, I'm going to allow you to talk and see if this functionality works. Are you ready? All right, here we go. So you should be able to speak now, Brendan, and you should just have to unmute yourself.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear me? Yes.
I can hear you.
All right, sweet. Just a quick question. I'm the Nooks guy. If we have specific access issues regarding like a conservation reserve or a provincial park, you guys are obviously dealing with the whole thing at Devil's Glen. How do I go about that personally to get help dealing with a conservation reserve, or / is the initiative just to work with the government overall to establish access at kind of all conservation reserves and provincial parks? Just maybe more clarification on that front.
So Brendan, I guess just for clarity there, your question was more related to the Climate Parks campaign specifically, or just more general how you would access, well, how you would have conversations around conservation authorities?
Well, yeah, I guess I have a specific one which I can, talk with you guys about offline, but I guess is the initiative for climbing in parks, like, is that proceeding past Devil's Glen? I guess I might have missed that at the start.
That initiative is targeted solely towards Ontario parks, so provincial run parks. We can help you out with negotiations with specific conservation managers. So like a conservation area would be managed separately and independently, and choices that Ontario Parks makes would not affect that. But you know how to reach us, and if you have a specific situation that's coming up, we'll definitely reach out. We'll help you navigate that as far as we can. Did that answer that, Brandon?
Oh yes, thank you. Sorry, I responded in the chat.
Oh, okay, cool.
All right, and this is where the power trip comes in. I'm now going to disable talking for Brendan, but feel free if you got other questions, feel free to put up your hand and I'll enable once again.
I will jump in here and thank people for showing up. 45 is a pretty good turnout for an AGM. So I'm pretty happy with that.
I will also jump in very quickly and saying thanks for coming out. And also as in the formal portion at the beginning, we did a bunch of nominations for directors, and there's been some really great work done by the directors that are here now. And I think there's such opportunity for many of the people that are on this call, many of the names I recognize, many of the people that are involved in their communities and our community at large as climbers in Ontario, to also be a director and get involved at the OAC board level if that's of interest to you. Obviously, we just committed to 1 year, but if you're interested at all, feel free to reach out. Come to some of the monthly meetings. Learn more about what we do when we're not, on your computer screens. It'd be really great to have some people come out and just learn or volunteer in different capacities, and then maybe even get interested in, a future director role.
Good point. Thanks, Dustin. To Steve's point in the comments, yes, agreed.
Well, I feel like we might not actually have much in the way of comments or questions coming, so I'm just going to drop the survey link in the chat again. If everyone could take a chance to fill that out sometime tonight, or if you're really too busy to do it now, sometime this coming week, we'll release it on social media and etc. So in case you forget, but it is there.
Alrighty, I think we're 8:33 here by my watch, and again, haven't seen too many more questions come through. What I will say, our contact information is on the slide here. If you have any last questions, feel free to reach out. We are monitoring that mailbox with great regularity. So feel free to reach out with anything else. Once again, thanks so much for everybody coming out and hearing about the OEC and the work that is ongoing. And again, just once again, appreciate all your support and help as we expand and steward access in the province of Ontario. So thanks so much, everybody. We'll close it there for this evening. Appreciate it. Have a good night.